I agree. I will tell you that when I was doing my time in the service, and the stuff I saw, some of it I couldn't explain, like lights in the sky during firefights, like orbs or lights that would be the size of a softball that looked that size looking up in the sky but making weird noises. And even going to Iraq myself and being near Haditha Dam and seeing the prisoners underneath the dam, and the prisoners would scream and there'd be this awful feeling underneath the dam, and then later finding out in the Bible that angels locked underneath there, where it talks about.
And this Haditha Dam is the Euphrates.
Is Euphrates,
and there's
correct.
an angel supposedly locked underneath the Euphrates,
Correct.
which is released in the book of Revelation.
Correct.
That's bizarre. So you're actually at this site, and soldiers are being locked, imprisoned underneath the Haditha Dam.
Correct.
And they're freaking out.
They were freaking out. They said they could feel it. In fact, the people who would guard them they would draw straws to see who would actually take them.
No one wanted to go.
Nobody wants to go down.
Now, Chris, you took a team and you went out to Sedona, Arizona to capture on video what was going on there. Why'd you pick Sedona?
Well, if you look around on the internet, do any research into this idea of interdimensional gateways and parallel worlds and things like that, you encounter lots of stuff about UFOs and aliens and all kinds of weird things. But one of the areas that pops up over and over again is Sedona, Arizona. And why that might be is open to speculation, but it is just ubiquitous on the internet as one of these areas. So I wanted to go there and see if I could actually document any of that.
Well, he not only went there, he not only documented, but he literally got on video and everyone could see it with their naked eye. Out of this portal from the invisible world came a being that you're actually, can we show it in the next segment? We'll show it to you. Be right back.
We'll be right back to It's Supernatural. We now return to It's Supernatural.
This is so fascinating to me. Chris, what does science have to say about these portals, immortal beings coming from another dimension?
Well, it's a perfectly respectable idea within science now to believe in parallel worlds, parallel dimensions. It's not even really controversial. Most scientists just accept it.
Tell me what you caught on camera in Sedona, Arizona.
Well, we got video and photographs of what people call orbs, okay? Now, I initially was very skeptical about the whole orb phenomenon. I've seen, people thinking that these are ghosts and things like that on the internet.
I've seen photographs
Right.
of these little circles.
So the way we did it is we set up a still photograph with a flash, the way people normally catch orbs, but at the same time have a video camera running from a different angle. Now, if it shows up on two different angles,
Right.
In the same spot, it can't be a dust particle on the lens or any of those kind of things. We were kind of surprised that not only did we catch them on both cameras, but the professional photographer that I hired to come out there and video it saw it with his naked eye. He saw a ball of light flying toward him as he was filming. So not only did they show up on both cameras, and we literally saw them with our eyes.
Okay, Tom, what does the Bible have to say in the last days about portals and things like this?
And this is the other thing, and I've studied prophecy a great deal of my life and never thought of it before, and I'm actually now saying that this is actually the most overlooked aspect of end times prophecy, the role that the windows of heaven and the gates of the earth will play in the end times. For instance, if you read the book of Revelation chapter 9, you see angels that are bound under the great river Euphrates, and a time comes when the gates or whatever's holding them there opens and they come up out of the earth. Very powerful. In fact, they wipe out 1/3 of rebellious humanity in the tribulation period. So we find out that the gateways of the earth is dynamic. It's a holding tank. Jesus tells story of the rich man and Lazarus going down into the belly of the earth, right? Jesus tells about Jonah, and he says, as he was in the belly of the earth, the Son of Man's going to go there too. Here's the good part though. When Jesus in his death, burial, and resurrection went down into the belly of the earth, when he came out, it says he brought with him the keys to death, hell, and the grave.
That's right.
So not only are there there are gates, there's keys, and he's got the important ones.
But here's the thing that I want to make clear to you. You need really godly discernment in the times and days that we're living in, because some of these passageways, demonic entities will come into the earth. Some of these passageways, angels are going to be coming into.
In December of 1888, Richard Wetherill and Charlie Mason were searching for cattle on the rim of the Mesa Verde Plateau in Colorado. What they found has become the most enduring mystery and the most controversial archaeological discovery of the American Southwest. Who were the ancient people that lived in these marvelous stone structures? Where did they come from? And more importantly, where did they go? What could have motivated a large, apparently sophisticated culture to just suddenly pick up and walk off, leaving everything, utensils, pottery, even food, still in place? But after more than 100 years of searching, the strange disappearance of the Anasazis is still a mystery. This wasn't just a few people that wandered off into oblivion, or a family, or even a village. Here, an entire nation of people appears to have simply vanished.
Everything was just as the original dwellers left it. Things were arranged in the rooms as if the people might have just been out visiting somewhere. Perfect specimens of pottery sat on the floors and other convenient locations. Stone implements and household equipment were where the Anasazi women had last used the articles. There was evidence of children playing house, even as children do now.
When Richard Wetherill discovered Cliff Palace, which is still the greatest cliff dwelling ever found in the United States, he was stunned by the fact that it looked as if the folks had just walked away yesterday and left their pots and their grinding stones in place, and their staffs and their tools. And part of that's because the preservation in alcoves is so wonderful in the Southwest. The climate is so dry. But it also suggests, and it's suggested to Wetherill, that they didn't intend to leave for good. They thought, well, we'll go for a few years, maybe a decade, but we'll come back and use this stuff again. But they never came back.
The strange disappearance of the Anasazis is one of the most intriguing mysteries of ancient America, but their disappearance is only the beginning of the puzzle.
But it's not just angels. Other entities send and descend. Now, you spoke with a Navajo historian of the oral history of Native Americans. Tell me what revelation you got.
Yeah, this was a very important thing. You know, white dudes like me never get a chance to sit down with a member of the Navajo Nation, especially not an academic and a guy who's written books that are used in their system, in their institutions. But we worked it out. Long story short, I wound up going to the four corners of the United States of America. We sat down in a traditional hogan. He's got the fire going. He's drawing in the dirt like the oral historian that he is. But I went there to ask him this question. What happened to the Anasazi, the pre-Pueblo Indians that built all the fantastic cliff dwellings in the Four Corner area, who literally seemed to disappear overnight? So he starts telling, you know, the sanitized story. Well, they probably migrated, blah, blah, blah. And I raised some objections to that, and he looks right into the camera. We filmed him for 3 hours. He looks right in the camera, and he says, well, I shouldn't tell you this, but if you would have asked my great-grandfather, here's the story that he would have told. And he starts telling about a portal opening in very early America, and a fallen reptilian being. They actually draw pictures of this thing. It looks like a half man, half reptile. He comes through the portal. He starts teaching the Anasazi how to go into their kivas and to practice sorcery, pharmakia, how to open gateways and doorways to the underworld, while all of a sudden the doorways start opening and giants emerge onto the surface of the earth. They draw that too in their petroglyphs that date back to 1,000 years before Jesus walked on the earth, of a doorway, the reptile. Giant six-toed and six-fingered Apache tribe have joined, the environmentalists in Arizona to sue the Vatican to try to stop them in federal court from being on that mountain. Well, I had assumed it's because they were there ahead of everybody else, right? So their forefathers and foremothers lived on the mountain, died on the mountain, so it's kind of like a graveyard, and they didn't want a bunch of heavy equipment in there. Well, I said that on your show.
Right.
Then the show broadcasts, and there's an Apache, a member of the nation out there watching the show, and he emails me and he wants me to know that what I had said was okay, it's true enough, but he said, that's not the point. You've missed the big picture. And I said, what's the big picture? And he said, well, Mount Graham is one of the 4 holiest mountains in all of the world for all indigenous people, and that's why we didn't want them up there, because it is what you or I would call a stargate, a doorway, a portal, a strategic geographic location through which entities have entered into and exited our three-dimensional reality since the dawn of time. Well, when you told me that, Sid, the conspiracy meter in my head went into the Richter scale now about why the Vatican would have been willing to fight in federal court to be on that mountain. Why not just go to another mountain, right?
So they really believe, as a matter of fact, Chris, you've been on the path of what you call the immortals, investigating with Tom for over 2 years. First of all, what's an immortal?
Well, Sid, immortal is just a word that means exempt from death. You don't die. It's just a very simple term. But, when I look in the Bible, in the scriptures, it says that God created all these other beings other than humans. Well, in Psalm 148, it says that he created the Malach and the Sabah, Hebrew words that mean usually angels and hosts is the way it gets translated. It's also a military term, but it says he created them to live forever and ever. So they're immortal. So they're not eternal like God the Creator. Mm-hmm. He has no beginning. He's always been. They have a beginning.
They were created.
But they're created, but they're not designed to die. So there's a whole host of divine beings who aren't necessarily angels. Angel is a word that means messenger. And we see those in the Gospels. We see them in Daniel. They come and they give a message from God to humans. But there's a whole class of these that aren't messengers. There's seraphim, the cherubim, the watchers.
Oh, okay. What is a portal?
A portal, that's just a word that means a doorway, an entrance or gate, and in a really simple sense. But what we're talking about is a gateway between realms. And like in the Bible, we see Paul talk about the first heaven, the second heaven, the third heaven, things like that. So we get the idea that there are like parallel realms, the heavenly realm and the earthly realm.
Right.
And so there's these other dimensions, perhaps is a way to say it. So we're looking at entrances in ways that beings translate between these realms.
Why is this diver burrowing into the bottom of this mini lake? She's literally disappearing into the sand and gravel of the water's floor. Only debris and the occasional bubbles from her breathing tank are visible. She's part of a project largely funded by National Geographic to dive into the sacred pools of the ancient Maya.
Descended down into the bottom, and I didn't want to have any interference with the water that was already in the pool, and so it required a little bit of digging.